Welcome back. In this video we will look at the life of Franklin. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was born in upstate New York on January the 30th, 1882. He came from the wealthy and aristocratic Hyde Park branch of the Roosevelt family. His parents provided him with the best education possible. He attended Groton, a prestigious school in Massachusetts, graduated in history at Harvard, and studied law at Columbia. Adhering to the standards of his class, he married young in 1905 with a distant cousin, Anna Eleanor Roosevelt, the niece of President Theodore Roosevelt. Together they had 6 children. He started practicing at a New York law firm, but politics was his main passion. Following in TR's footsteps, he was elected to the New York State Senate, but as a Democrat. In 1912 he supported Wilson's campaign, and Wilson subsequently appointed him to the same post that had brought TR to national prominence, Assistant Secretary of the Navy. FDR loved sailing and put all of his energies in the new post, specializing in the business side of naval administration. After World War I, his popularity and success resulted in his being named as the Democratic Party's candidate for vice president, along with presidential hopeful James Cox. However, the Democrats lost that election. The United States retreated into isolationism, and FDR returned to private life. Then tragedy struck in the summer of 1921. While vacationing at Campobello Island, FDR contracted polio, and in spite of all his efforts, he never regained the use of his legs. Nevertheless, with determination, the crucial support of his wife Eleanor, and encouragement from his political advisor Louis Howe, he soon resumed his political career. After a strenuous campaign, in 1928 he was elected as governor of New York, an excellent springboard for entering national politics. While the Great Depression was damaging President Hoover and the Republicans, Roosevelt's bold efforts to combat it in New York enhanced his reputation. In 1932, FDR won the Democratic Party's nomination, and in November he won the presidency by 7 million votes. Once elected, FDR faced the greatest crisis in American history since the Civil War. Urgent actions were needed to reverse the economic collapse. Collectively, these measures became his famous New Deal program. During the first 100 days of his administration, Franklin fed a stream of legislation to Congress for reviving confidence and saving millions from starvation. The real novelty of the New Deal was that it involved government directly in areas of social and economic life as never before. FDR stated it very clearly in 1938. He said, "Let us not be afraid to help each other. Let us never forget that government is ourselves and not an alien power over us. The ultimate rulers of our democracy are not a president and senators and congressmen and government officials, but the voters of this country." Due to the enormous popularity of the New Deal, Roosevelt easily defeated Alfred Landon to be re-elected in 1936 and hoped to push his program of domestic reforms even further. But by 1939, with the outbreak of war in Europe, FDR had to concentrate increasingly on foreign affairs. When Hitler attacked Poland in September 1939, FDR immediately took measures to prepare for American involvement despite continuing isolationist opposition. This increased following the fall of France in 1940, when the US Congress enacted a draft for military service. Re-elected for a third time later that year, Franklin signed a Lend-Lease bill to help the nations at war with Germany and Italy. America, in FDR's view, must become the arsenal of democracy, the last defense of world freedom. The surprise attack by Japanese aircraft at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, brought the United States directly into the war. FDR exercised his powers as commander-in-chief actively, working with his military command, but overriding them when necessary, and himself making decisions on wartime strategy. Politically, he moved to create a grand alliance of the United Nations against the Axis powers, led by the triumvirate of himself, Britain's Winston Churchill, and the Soviet Union's Joseph Stalin. But the unending stress of the war literally wore Roosevelt out. By 1944, his physicians had placed him on a strict diet and heavy medication, but he was determined to oversee America's impending victory, and he successfully campaigned for a fourth presidential term at the end of that year. However, in April 1945, while at Warm Springs, Georgia, FDR suffered a massive stroke and died at the age of 63. FDR's death came on the eve of complete military victory in Europe and within months of victory over Japan in the Pacific. He couldn't play a role in the building of the New World Order he had foreseen, the United Nations being the quintessential symbol of this, but he had changed American politics forever.